Welcome to the Douglas County Greystone Power Luncheon, Chamber of Commerce luncheon today. I want to thank you all for being here. Welcome back from the Christmas break and the snow days and the blizzard and all that good stuff. I'm Steve Morgan with United Community Advisory Services, and I'm the 2011 chairman for the board for the Douglas County Chamber of Commerce, and I am genuinely honored to be able to work in this role. I was trying to go back 20-something years to a speech class I took in college to get over the nervousness, and I always remembered the one way they said you could, help yourself in a crowd like this, and I thought that's what I'm going to do, and then I looked down at this table of 5 guys and thought, well, that's not going to work. But I know we're all anxiously waiting to hear what Dr. Smith has to say about the 2011 economic forecast. But before we start the program today, there's several people and groups that we need to express thanks to or introduce. First, let me start by inviting Mr. Dennis Conley to come up and say a few words for sponsoring the luncheon today.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity and the privilege of being here today and seeing all of you. As you know, we are a certified public accounting firm just 2 blocks from here. And believe it or not, we have over 100 years of working experience and expertise in that firm. 51 of those years are mine. I would like to introduce my staff, Donna Cox, who is an EA, which means an enrolled agent with the Internal Revenue Service. Also a QuickBooks Pro advisor, Karen Waits, who is an EA, enrolled agent, QuickBooks Pro professional advisor, Lisa Shelnut, QuickBooks Pro professional advisor, Donna K. Clifton, individual tax specialist, Sarah Igman, QuickBooks Pro professional advisor, and last but not least, my lovely wife of 52 years, Elaine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. We appreciate you and your firm for the support. Before we give thanks for today's delicious lunch, I'd like to offer special thanks to Salmon Roscoe's. I know Roscoe was here, so thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Billy Mayhew with Douglas County Bank to come forward and lead us in our invocation and pledge.
May we bow our heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful place that you've allowed us to live in, and thank you for all the graciousness that you've given us. Thank you for the safety that you gave us through this storm we had last week. We lift up the Chamber of Commerce and all of its members and ask that everything we do be do in your honor. Please bless this food to our bodies. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Would stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As many of you know, the Chamber Diplomats are a group of 30 individuals who collectively represent the Chamber and the community at ribbon cuttings and events and in many other ways behind the scenes. And at this time, I would like to announce our Diplomat of the Quarter for the 4th quarter, and it is Randy Miles with the City of Douglasville Convention and Visitors Bureau. If you will please come forward. I saw Randy. Is she here? Okay. Oh, there she is. Is it this too? Okay. Well, congratulations, Randy. Thank you. We appreciate all of your hard work and effort. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. William J. Smith. He's an economics professor at the University of West Georgia. Prior to coming to the University of West Georgia in 2006, he was a graduate instructor at Georgia State University's Department of Economics. Dr. Smith's education includes a bachelor's degree in economics from the State University of West Georgia, a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of West Georgia, a master's degree in economics from Georgia State University, and his PhD in economics comes from Georgia State University. Dr. Smith is well known as one of the leading regional economic forecasters, and we are pleased to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. William Smith, better known as Joey.
There we go. I'm glad to see everybody made it back from the snow. This is probably the first opportunity a lot of you have had to get out from your living room in front of the television set and actually come out and get some fresh food. Here's a question I was going to ask everybody. One of the things I've always been curious about growing up in the South is why is it every time it snows, we all head to the grocery store and buy milk, bread, and eggs, and then head to the liquor store and buy liquor. I keep wondering what it is we're doing the day after the snow. We're getting up making French toast and getting completely drunk at breakfast. So, something to ponder next time we have a big snowstorm like that. By the way, I came into the Atlanta airport the night of the snow. I got in at 9 o'clock. We were the last flight to arrive from Denver, Colorado. We left Denver. There's about 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground. We get to Atlanta airport. And I don't know who lied and told y'all that there were only 4 inches of snow at the Atlanta airport. There were 8 inches of snow on my car alone. So, anyway, let's talk about the West Georgia region. Well, we'll talk about it this way. There we go. So first of all, we're going to talk about it in summary. When we're looking at West Georgia, one of the things I have to say is that especially in Douglas County and across the West Georgia region, the housing market continues to be the biggest drag in the economy. There are other things looming. There is the commercial real estate problems that are still out there, but housing, this continues to be the biggest drag. Goods production in Douglas County, Carroll County, these two areas have been the hardest hit. Goods production include things like construction, it includes manufacturing, and we've seen a larger percentage of jobs lost in goods production than we have in any other industry, and by most measures, we've lost about 1/3 of our productive capacity in that area. Over the last few quarters, we've lost upwards of a couple of hundred firms in this area. We've seen government layoffs, we've seen furloughs. Now we're talking about hiring freezes. These are all to deal with revenue problems from fiscal year 2010, and that's with stimulus money. That's with the stimulus money that was coming from the federal government in excess of $1 billion. For those people who are in county government, it's not going to get any better anytime soon. We're seeing revenue numbers pick up. But the thing is, those revenue numbers are not picking up fast enough to offset the loss of those stimulus dollars from this past year. So there's still problems looming there. West Georgia numbers have improved, however. The biggest improvement has been in Douglas County. So you can lift your hand up, pat yourself on the back right there. Douglas County has actually seen positive growth in employment. The only county right now that can boast that. A big reason for that, though, is that Douglas County was pretty hard hit. And Douglas County is just now starting to see that second wind. We're starting to see a little bit of a push through from the recession. So really right now what we're looking for is what's it going to be? What's coming up? What's our next big industry? A lot of people are pointing to healthcare. Education is having problems budgetarily speaking. Healthcare has been one of the few industries that's been able to push through this recession without tremendous job losses. But one of the things I'm going to show you later on is that healthcare is not recession-proof. People talk about healthcare as being a recession-proof industry. When people lose their jobs and they lose their healthcare insurance, hospitals end up having to bear the burden there, and they have to cut costs somehow. So it is not recession-proof, it's just recession-resistant. So first, let's look at some leading indicators. We're going to look at some indicators. We're going to look at both U.S. and government unemployment and unemployment insurance claims, and we're going to talk about some of the recent news. So this is sort of the macro level. When we look at leading indicators, the blue line here starts to turn up. These leading indicators turn up before the recession ends, and it also turns down before the recession starts. That's the reason it's a leading indicator. What we've seen is that since prior to the ending of the recession in mid-2009, the leading indicators have been pointing in the upward direction. Took a little bit of a respite here over the last few months and then turned up again. Okay, so this is actually really good news. What this means is not only is the recession over, but we're about to see at least some growth in our area. So these leading indicators are things like, these are some unemployment numbers. These are also information about manufacturing production. These are, we're looking at data across the spectrum. And all of those indicators right now are pointing in the upward direction. So this bodes really positive economic news for at least the nation. When we look at the unemployment rate in Georgia and the United States, one of the things we have to say is that even though the United States unemployment rate has been coming down a little bit, Georgia has been trending sideways. We've been in a holding pattern. We're waiting for the start of the reduction of higher rates of unemployment. We've got a little bit in excess of 10%. We really haven't seen any kind of resurgence of jobs yet. And until we do, we're really not going to see a full recovery. When we look at unemployment insurance claims, these are the weekly claims from the federal government. What we can say here is that those have been trending downwards. They've been trending downwards across the United States. That means we're adding a lot fewer people to the unemployment rolls than we're taking off of them. Okay, so somewhere in the United States, things are getting better. It hadn't really happened here yet. One of the things I have to say about our area, the West Georgia area, the West Georgia region, is that we just haven't been adding the jobs back fast enough to take care of those people who have been added to the unemployment rolls. Okay, GDP growth at the national level has been positive. We thought it was losing steam toward the end of 2010, but it's actually started to pick up a little bit. We're seeing sustained growth. We haven't seen the inflation rate that people have been expecting, and that's a good thing. What that means is that the Federal Reserve is probably not going to be raising interest rates anytime soon, and when they do start raising, they'll probably raise it at 0.25% each time, or 25 basis points. So we're not going to see huge increases in interest over the next few months, probably not any interest rate increases over the next few months, and we're probably not going to see any huge interest rate increases over the next year. 2010 retail sales were up by 6.6% nationally over 2009. Now that's a good growth, but it's coming from a very weak year. Christmas sales in 10 beat Christmas sales in 9 by 7.8%. Now this is important because this is what was going to indicate whether or not we were going to go back into a double dip. Had Christmas been a lot worse or even flat, we really stood a chance of slipping back into a second downturn. But it looks as if Christmas was at least had enough sales that we're not going to see that. Auto sales have begun to pick up again. In December 2010, they were up 11% over December 2009. Everybody was saying the auto industry was dead. We're not going to see any more sales from Ford, GM. Well, we probably still won't from Chrysler. But Ford and GM actually had increased sales. In fact, GM looks pretty good now. If we look at annual auto sales through December, they were up 11% as well over 2009. Okay, so some of those key components in our area. Remember, we live in an area where everybody drives. People say we have public transit. I haven't really seen much of it. So everybody has a car. And what we're seeing here is people are starting to replace their older cars. They've been driving those cars for the past 3 or 4 years, and people are starting to invest in new cars. And those new cars are tax revenues for the counties. Right? Wherever you buy them, the tax revenues come back to the county. So that's very positive news, both in terms of retail and in terms of tax revenues. Now, I know you're not supposed to put large charts with lots of numbers up here, but there's a lot to talk about here. These are the tax revenue reports that came out just this past week. And one of the things to point out here is that sales tax revenues at the state level is up 7.5%. So sales and use tax is up 7.5% gross. On net, it's up 7.7%. Okay? Why is this important? Well, when you combine this right here with the gasoline tax is up 28.1%, but gasoline tax is split into two pieces. There's a sales tax component of it that's based on the price. So when the price goes up, the tax revenues go up. But there's also the excise portion of it that's based on the number of gallons purchased. When the number of gallons purchased goes up, that excise portion goes up. What this indicates here is that we were shopping over Christmas. Okay, we spent money over Christmas more than we did the previous year. We spent more on gasoline because gasoline prices were up, but we drove more anyway. Okay, even in spite of the fact that we had higher gasoline prices, we decided to shop. Year before, we didn't do that. We stayed home. So what that means is that there's some pent-up demand out there, at least in our area, in the state of Georgia. There's pent-up demand. There's pent-up demand for retail. Okay? One thing I also ought to point out is that property taxes are down 22.5%. Now, this is state property taxes. That's only 1/4 of a mill the state collects, but that 1/4 of a mill goes right along with the rest of the millage rates across the state. So this decline right here is based on lower property values at the same tax rate and people who are probably delinquent on their taxes. There's a lot of delinquencies out there. So we pointed out all that. Corporate income tax, we were just talking about this before. One of the things that is at issue right now is how could we possibly revamp the state's tax structure so that we could get a better performing state. We could be more corporate friendly, more business friendly. Corporate income tax is up 46.7%. That's the reason, that means that corporations are making a lot more money. They're having to pay a lot more taxes because of that. One suggestion that we'd actually talked about is the potential elimination of the corporate income tax and try to respread that over other taxes that are out there. If you want to make Georgia a very friendly business state, tell corporations they're not going to be taxed twice. They're not going to be taxed on the corporate side and then taxed on the personal side when they make that money as well. When we look at general revenues, as I said, sales tax on that motor fuel and the excise tax, again, indicates that for that period from, this is from the end of June all the way through through November, we saw an increase in the fuel taxes. We drove more at a higher price. Okay? So this is actually really good news. It sounds like bad news. We're paying more taxes, right? But it's good news because it means that we're doing stuff now. Last year this time, we didn't feel like doing much of anything. So this is actually really good news. So what does local revenues look like? Local sales tax revenues have held basically steady. When you look at the local revenues, that 3% that is sent back to the locals from the state, we went down just below 1%. So it's basically steady. And that was in the first half of fiscal year 2011. That's through about Christmas 2011. But Christmas provided a big boost. So one of the things that we're having problems with at the local level, we're having problems with being able to generate those revenues for the local government. Property taxes, they were up by 2.6% in the first half of 2011. But will that hold? Probably not. And also that 2.6% is based on the fact that last year property values dropped. So that just means a lot of this is probably due to increases in the tax rate. State revenue numbers, however, across the board are indicating that we're picking up. Things are starting to pick up where they were just completely flat or still declining as of this time last year. Stimulus dollars is key here, though. We're losing all those stimulus dollars. They're completely over. 2011 is going to be a rough year for county and other local governments that were receiving those stimulus dollars, because now they're going to have to make up with it with their own revenues. So the question is, are we there yet? This is the roller coaster ride, right? Are we there yet? We're there yet. We are there. Okay, we're at the bottom and starting to head back up. So we're there, but where is there? When we look at the roller coaster, one of the things that we look for is whether the leading indicators are heading up. This tells us that we're heading out of the recession. We've already seen consumer confidence start to go back in the upward direction. It bounces around from month to month, but the trending is in the upward direction. GDP and income at the national level is up. Hours worked is starting in the upward direction. The one thing we haven't been able to do yet is add those jobs. Okay, so this is our economic roller coaster. We are heading back in the upward direction, but we're stuck here where the jobs are. We haven't started adding those back. And as soon as we see jobs start to go back into the system, we're going to see the unemployment rate start to drop. Is that going to happen quickly? Everybody knows it's not going to happen fast. We're probably going to see a very slow decline down to 6% over the next year or so. We're not going to drop down to 6% anytime in 2011. Hopefully by the end of 2011, we'll be back down to a manageable 7 or 8%, hopefully. But even that is best case scenario. So let's talk about it. The good, the bad, and the ugly for the West Georgia region. So we always start off with the worst news first. So we're going to start off with the ugly. Foreclosure numbers are not getting better for our area, they're getting worse. And one of the reasons they're getting worse is that we now have a lot of people that are so upside down they've decided to stop paying. It's easier for them to take the time that they're not going to be able to get credit and use that money that they would be paying toward a house, toward a rental property. We also have seen an ending of the home buyer tax incentives over the past year. We've seen a difficult credit market, and one thing that people haven't taken into consideration is the fact that a lot of local governments have started selling off the tax liens for delinquent taxes. And this is forcing a large number of people, on top of these other people that are going into foreclosure, it's forcing these other people into foreclosure as well. So all of these have slowed the absorption of those foreclosures back into the single-family residential market. If we look through October 2009, we still are seeing double-digit increases in foreclosure rates across our entire region. Douglas County showed a 15.1% increase in foreclosures as of through October 2010. That's the best in the region, and it's still a double-digit increase. And one of the things that this has caused is an increase in the number of vacancies in the area. Now, Douglas County, right here, actually has some areas that have seen declining vacancies. Specifically, this area in southeast Douglas and right in downtown Douglasville. Okay, so Douglas County is one of the few counties in the area that's got at least some reasonably large tracts of land, large housing developments, where vacancy rates has turned in the other direction. Most of the counties in our area, most of the areas in our counties have actually seen increasing vacancy rates. Now, the one on the left here, this is vacancy rates in, let's see, which one is this? This one is vacancy rates in commercial, and this is vacancy rates in housing. So what we see is that vacancy rates in commercial and housing pretty much are located in similar areas. They're not quite the same because people don't live exactly in commercial districts, but they live nearby. So those vacant housing, they're leading to vacant commercial properties, things like strip malls. So we've got some still looming problems there. This brings us back to housing. Okay? Here is another piece of good news. It's not great news, but it's good news. Over the past year, we've seen more housing starts than we did in the previous year. Okay, do you see the difference? This was 2009, this is 2010. Almost imperceptible from the back row back there, right? But it's larger. One of the things that we're looking for is not a lot of new houses being built. We don't want a lot of new houses being built. We don't want to come back to a time where we're building more houses than we need. What we're looking for is stabilization in the housing market. We're looking for the bottom. The bottom was last year. It's not this year. We're heading back on the upward trend this year. So we're seeing some stabilization in the market. Is it everywhere? It's not quite everywhere. If we look at the housing starts, the main area that we're seeing increases in housing starts is in Paulding County. Coweta County. Coweta County is pretty much leading the way. Last year to this year, they've got 40 to 50% more houses, depending on which quarter you're looking at. Carroll County just built 110 multifamily units. But guess what those units are geared for? Right in downtown Carrollton. Anybody? No. Senior citizens. These are students that couldn't get a house and are stuck. Now we've got a senior living community coming into Carroll County. Now why would this be important for Carrollton? Seniors pay taxes and they don't have children. At least they don't have children that are still going to school for the most part. So these are relatively good bets in terms of tax revenues and relatively low amounts of services provided. So Carrollton now, or Carroll County, is looking at attracting seniors to their area. Something to consider. Douglas, however, Douglas is still struggling. Permits in Douglas this past year were down 50%, 50.7% from 2009. So Douglas still has a problem there. Now, is it a huge problem? Not really, because 50% decline meant that we went from a couple of hundred houses down to 100 houses built. I mean, that's not a large number of houses, especially when you're talking about Douglas County prior to 2006 building nearly 2,000 houses a year. Okay, so bad, a little worse. Okay, so here's what it looks like. If you look at Douglas County is now not nearly as large in terms of the housing market as Coweta and Paulding. Coweta and Paulding are building a lot more houses than Douglas is. We're seeing an increase in Coweta, no increase in Carroll, no increase in Haralson, no increase in Paulding, but when you add in those multifamily units, Carroll County actually bumps up quite a bit, and it makes the entire region positive. So we've seen positive growth in housing this past year. So the bottom has been set now. What about initial claims? Remember, initial claims tell us how many people we're adding to the unemployment rolls. Initial claims for our region is going down. This means fewer and fewer people are being added to the unemployment rolls. We're almost down to a reasonable amount now. Unemployment rates across the region have been still trending kind of sideways. We're in a holding pattern at around 10%. But Douglas County is actually doing just a little bit better than it did just about a year and a half ago. September 2009, we're trending down here in Douglas County. It's back up right now, but a lot of that is people being laid off after Christmas. So you're going to see the unemployment rate rise. This is not seasonally adjusted data. It's better to look at the trend. So we're seeing it trend a little sideways and a little down. And this is probably what the unemployment rates are going to look like for a while. It's going to trend down, but it's going to take a long time to get there at this steep, this shallow rate of decline. Here's what the 12-month change in the unemployment rate looks like for the area. Now you look at that and you say, well, those darker areas, those are places where we saw increases in the unemployment rate. The lighter areas are where we saw decreases. But the reality is our area is just right about in the center. I mean, it's not that different from the rest of Georgia. One place you should be, I always have to point out a place you should be glad you're not in. Okay, you know, if you're from Haralson County or Carroll County, you're always supposed to say you should be glad you're not from Alabama. This area right here, I hope we don't have too many Alabama folks here today. This area right here in South Georgia, it's like a black hole. You can't put jobs down there fast enough to take care of the unemployment that's going on down there. It's huge amounts of unemployment. So we're not in that dire a situation. We're a little above average in terms of the state, just a little bit, in terms of the unemployment rate. One of the areas that we've been hard hit is the goods production industry. This is, you have to temper this. This is good news. If you look at goods production, we're only declining in the single digits now. Okay? And I also have to point out that the most recent data we have at the county level is as of second quarter 2010, so this doesn't include the second half of 2010. It's very likely that in the second half, these growth rates are going to be down to zero, or up to zero, I should say, up to zero. But Douglas County saw the second lowest decline in manufacturing and goods production. Okay? First lowest was Carroll County, and the reason that's the first lowest is because Carroll County was hammered early on in the recession. We lost a couple thousand jobs just like that. So Carroll County has been doing really poorly in terms of goods production. Douglas County has been hit hard, hadn't been hit as badly. Total employment, now here's the piece of good news to point out. Total employment in Douglas County is up 0.1%. It's actually 1.3 tenths of 1%. Now that might sound like a little bit, but if you try to get interest on a savings account lately, this is not bad. Okay? We were just talking about different financial instruments before we came over here, talking about the difference between savings account, which gives you practically zero interest, versus something else that gives you a little better than zero, 0.00. But Douglas County is up in two key categories: total, service production, and government. Now, a lot of you probably would, some of you would probably like to say, well, let's lower government some more, right? But there's a lot of key areas in government that we have key services. Fire, police, education. These are key areas of government. We don't want to reduce employment to the point where we have 50, 60 kids in a classroom. So we're seeing some employment gains here in Douglas County. This is really the first in the area. Our region hasn't seen anybody with positive growth. You're first. We've seen a little bit of positive growth in Paulding County, but it doesn't add up to positive growth overall. In Carroll County, we're still declining at 3.3% over the year. So as of late summer 2010, Douglas was the only county in West Georgia to have positive overall growth. And where did it come from? The majority of it came from administrative, support, waste management, and remediation. That's a very long way of saying temp workers. That's temp workers. Now, this is also relatively good news. Temp workers precede permanent workers. Now, some of these are census workers, but not all of them. It didn't take 600 new census workers to count people that didn't turn in their census forms in Douglas County. So some of these are going to be census workers, but not all of them. Second was health care and social assistance, hospitals and doctors' offices. For some reason, y'all decided to house a large number of federal workers here. I'm not sure where that came from, because I'm still looking for information about where those jobs were added. We didn't add a new federal location here, so it had to be one of the locations increased their employment, and I'm guessing this must have been census workers, 195 census workers. I don't know. That one's still up in the air. So for those people who claim that health care is recession-proof, here's proof that it's not recession-proof. If you look at health care for the West Georgia region, in the second and third quarter of 2009, we saw a decline in health care employment for the region. It's not recession-proof. Douglas County did not have a decline in health care employment throughout the recession, but other counties in our area did. If you look here, the only two that had reasonably positive growth throughout the recession was Carroll and Douglas. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Carroll County is currently expanding a lot of its health care facilities. They're building a cardiac unit at Tanner. Douglas County, same thing, expanding health care facilities here. They expanded health care facilities in Coweta County, but they didn't see a growth. They actually combined two hospitals, and we saw a decline in health care employment there. So if you look specifically at Douglas County, Douglas County only had really one period of decline, of serious decline throughout the entire recession, and that was in 2008. The rest of the time it was either growing or remaining relatively close to flat. Only a few employees either gained or lost. So, looking at the overall picture, if we look at building permits, Douglas County is still doing very poorly in terms of building permits. Unemployment claims have started to look a lot better though. They're not great, but they're looking better. Unemployment rates, still too high. We're not growing fast enough in our area to employ those people that are left unemployed. Manufacturing employment is atrocious. The only reason it doesn't look worse right now is because we've shed so many jobs that the people who are left are probably skeleton staffs in most cases. Retail employment has actually held pretty close to constant. It's held its own throughout the recession. Healthcare employment has held its own, and in most cases has gone up, but not all cases. Temp jobs is really the area where we've seen the most improvement, and temp jobs mean that we're going to be adding honest-to-goodness permanent jobs pretty soon. So overall, it's still real estate. We still have to go back to real estate. This is still the biggest problem in the area. And how are we going to deal with that? Well, the only way you can deal with it is to let it take its course. So where are we? We're still at the point where we need to pull those jobs on the upward side. We've got to get this a little further along. So areas of concern, housing is the biggest problem. Foreclosures and vacancies are up in most areas, and now banks and third-party entities are dealing in tax liens, and this is increasing the foreclosure rate across the Southeast, in fact, across the United States. West Georgia saw a net decline of 122 firms from quarter 2 '09 to quarter 2 '10, and that's actually an improvement over the previous year, a previous set of quarters, quarter 1 '09 and quarter 1 '10, we lost 300 firms. Okay, so we're still losing firms. Government employment losses and local revenues are still going to be a big problem, and those problems are going to keep on coming because we've lost all that revenue that was coming from the federal government in stimulus money. By the way, I have to remind you that that's actually your money that's coming back to us in stimulus money. It's not that we're getting that stuff for free. Just in case you didn't know. Check your pockets. Make sure. Large firm declines and employment declines in some key industries are still a problem. We're still losing manufacturing employment in our area, and even though manufacturing employment is becoming less and less important in terms of the size of the economy, it's still important because it still has a big multiplier for our area. There's a lot of capital base that comes in when we have manufacturing, and that's good for tax revenues, and it's good for attracting additional businesses. There are some reasons for optimism, some big reasons for optimism. Even though Douglas County has had problems over the past couple of years, probably the biggest reason for optimism is that y'all have been able to still attract businesses to the area. Your location is key to attracting these businesses. Y'all have got a new AT&T facility, Medline, Tyco. These are all brand new firms that are coming in to replace some firms that closed up shop and left. Okay, so that actually, I would tend to look at that as being a big positive because what you're doing is you're replacing firms that were weakened by the economy with firms that are expanding during a bad economy. We've also seen smaller overall job losses in 5 counties. Douglas actually gained 1%. That should have gotten a big cheer, but I know 1%, 1/10 of 1% doesn't sound like something you should get overwhelmingly misty-eyed about, but it is good. Unemployment claims are trending in the downward direction. We just haven't seen unemployment rates following. It hadn't followed yet. The big area that we can say has been a hot spot has been healthcare and temp jobs. The nice thing about healthcare is it brings facilities with it. It also brings good paying jobs with it. Temp jobs, not so much, but temp jobs, that's pointing in the upward direction for the future. It's saying it's going to bring better paying jobs soon. Thanks for having me, and if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis Conley, if you come back up, he has donated some door prizes, and we're going to draw for those now. Oh, wow. We have 4 crystal glasses. These are really nice.
Oh, you want me to draw?
Let me get my ticket.
Ticket. There. What number it is?
364920. Well, it's not me. Draw another one.
This is for all that liquor you bought when you went to the store.
365059. Mr. Andy McCall. There you go. Congratulations. Ooh, 50. A $50 gift certificate to Les Jardins. How say that? There you go. What she said.
It's Les Jardins Blanc.
Thank you. 365088. And we have another $50 gift certificate. Les Jardins Blanc. Les Jardins Blanc. Three 365047. 047. Let's draw one more. People don't know what they're missing. 034. Two of my Leadership Douglas classmates, best class ever, no doubt.
Applications are available.
That's correct. We do have applications available. A couple of quick reminders. We have a ribbon cutting for Wink Online Shopping Mall in the foyer immediately following this program. If you join Patty and Stan in celebrating their new business by joining just outside these doors. We also have another important reminder that the Chamber's annual banquet, awards banquet, sponsored by United Community Bank, is Saturday, February the 5th at the Center at Arbor Connection. This year's awards banquet will sell out because we only have a few tickets left now. There are 58 tickets available. It is a great event. You need to see Kimberly Weaver before you leave today if you'd like to reserve your seats. Also, don't we have a coffee card this next Thursday? This Thursday that was rescheduled. Is it on there?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry, it's the last page. Thanks again to the City of Douglasville for the use of the Downtown Conference Center, and to Sam and Roscoe's for the great food, Mr. Connolly for sponsoring today's luncheon, and to Greystone Power for their naming sponsorship. We appreciate everyone attending and hope you all have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you Thursday at Gold's Gym for the Georgia Power Coffee Card Exchange. Thank you very much.